After seeing her mother-in-law off after her birthday party, the wife accidentally found a packet of white powder in her bag. Just 15 minutes later, the mother-in-law returned happy and not alone, but with the police. But she had no idea how she would regret coming back, because her daughter-in-law had already prepared a surprise. And before we continue, please write what country you are from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The evening turned out to be unusually cold for the end of March. There were still remnants of snow outside, covered with a gray crust of ice, and the air was filled with pre-spring dampness that penetrated to the bone. But Lydia Sergeyevna's apartment was hot and stuffy, not only because of the working radiators and the smell of baked meat, but also because of the too close proximity of people who could not stand each other. Anna sat at the festive table and pretended to be engrossed in a conversation with her neighbor in the chair, Aunt Nina, Lydia Sergeyevna's sister. In fact, she was following every word her mother-in-law said. Lydia Sergeyevna was beaming today. Her 55th birthday had brought together almost all her relatives and friends. She accepted congratulations, accepted gifts, and only her gaze kept returning to Anna. There was something predatory in that gaze, as if she had arranged the celebration not only for herself, but also in order to once again show that she was the mistress of this house, and not a stranger who had taken her son away. Anna knew this too well. 3 years of marriage to Igor had taught her patience, but sometimes it seemed that her nerves were about to give out. She caught herself on the fact that she was ready for any trick from her mother-in-law. Anechka, Lydia Sergeyevna suddenly said loudly, so that everyone could hear. "You're very quiet today. Maybe the wine is not right, or you didn't like the cake." Quote. The guests laughed together. Anna felt the blood rush to her cheeks, but she smiled tensely and coldly. "Everything is wonderful, Lydia Sergeyevna. Everything is always perfect with you." Quote. The word sounded almost like a compliment, but Lydia Sergeyevna caught the irony and narrowed her eyes. "Well, the main thing is that my husband likes it," she noted and glanced at Igor, "because, you know, men love it when a woman knows how to enjoy life." Igor, sitting to the right of his mother, awkwardly coughed and looked away. As usual, he did not want to interfere. Anna felt the usual emptiness in her chest. Over the past 3 years, she had gotten used to the fact that her husband preferred not to stand between her and his mother. He is afraid of her. He is still afraid, although he is already 35, she thought. The clock struck 9, and the guests began to leave. Some were drinking themselves into laughter, some were complaining about their blood pressure, some were saying goodbye too noisily. Lydia Sergeyevna looked satisfied, like a general after a successful parade. Anna helped clear the table, threw her bag over her shoulder and went out into the hallway with her mother-in-law. "Thank you for the holiday," she said, trying to be polite. "Everything was very beautiful." "Yes, of course," Lydia Sergeyevna answered and unexpectedly lightly touched her hand. "You're great, Anechka, you tried." Anna was surprised. It was rare to hear something like that from her mother-in-law. She even thought that maybe fatigue and alcohol had made Lydia a little softer. They said goodbye, and the door closed behind her mother-in-law. Anna returned to the room, where Igor was already yawning, unfolding a chairbed for the relatives who were spending the night. Quote, "Well, how is it?" he asked, glancing at his wife. As usual, Anna answered briefly. She didn't want to start a conversation in front of the guests. She went into the bedroom, threw her bag on the bed and suddenly noticed. The zipper was slightly open. Anna rarely left it open. Thinking that she must have forgotten to zip it up in the rush, she unzipped the bag completely. Inside was a small plastic bag. It contained white powder. Anna froze. Her heart pounded so hard that her vision went dark. Quote, "What is it?" she whispered and carefully took out the package. The powder was crumbly, fine, like flour. But it was not flour. A word that she was afraid to pronounce even in her mind instantly popped into her head. Drugs. Anna felt her legs give way. She abruptly closed the bag, hid the package in her side pocket and went to the door. Thoughts began to whirl in her head. This could not have happened by chance. Who When? How? The answer came to her by itself. Lydia Sergeyevna's face appeared before her eyes, her soft smile in the hallway, the strange ease with which she touched his hand. Mother-in-law. Only she could do this. Anna went out into the living room, trying to remain calm, but a hurricane was raging inside. She looked around the room. The relatives were enthusiastically discussing something of their own. No one noticed anything. Quote, Igor? She called her husband quietly. He came up, slightly surprised by the expression on her face. What had happened? Anna hesitated. Should she tell him or keep quiet for now? What if he didn't believe her? What if he took her mother's side? She clenched her teeth and just shook her head. Then Anna froze by the window, feeling a hum growing in her chest, like a low percussion bell. She saw a car with a flashing light stop below at the entrance, and her heart sank painfully. Quote, Who's there? She asked, although she already knew the answer. Igor turned around and shrugged his shoulders. Mom and the police. Quote. He himself did not believe what he said, but a dry voice was already heard in the corridor. Good evening, Senior Lieutenant Famine, District Police Officer. We have received a statement. Please open the door. Anna squeezed the edge of the windowsill with her hands so hard that her fingers turned white. Lydia, is it her? Of course, it is she. Igor opened the door. Two people in uniform entered the apartment, one younger, the other older, with a tired face and a folder under his arm. Behind them was Lydia Sergeyevna. Her look was triumphant, as if she had brought home long-awaited guests who would finally put everything in its place. Here she is, said the mother-in-law, pointing at Anna. I told you, comrade police officers, my son should not live with such a woman. Mom, what are you talking about? Igor said, confused. Anna took a step forward, feeling a dry lump rising in her throat. She tried to speak calmly, but her voice treacherously wavered. What's going on? We have a statement, the senior police officer answered. We were informed about the possible storage of prohibited substances. We need to inspect the premises. Quote, Igor opened his mouth, but did not have time to say anything. Lydia triumphantly stepped into the room and looked around. Check her bag, she said. And there was barely concealed joy in her voice. There, I'm sure. Anna felt everything inside go cold. Her bag was in the bedroom. In the bag was that very package. If they found it, she understood that this was the end. It did not matter that she was innocent. The very fact of the find would bring down such a burden of suspicion on her that it would be almost impossible to justify herself. Anna took a deep breath. No, I will not let them win. I have to hold out. Do you have a warrant? She asked. And her voice sounded firmer than she expected. The policemen exchanged glances. The senior one nodded slightly. Yes, everything is formalized. We need to conduct an inspection. Quote, he took out the papers and handed them to Igor. He signed mechanically, although bewilderment and fear splashed in his eyes. They entered the bedroom. Lydia walked first, as if she was the owner. She almost touched the bag with her fingers, but pretended to yield this right to the police. Right here, she pointed. Check carefully. The junior policeman bent down and took out the bag. Anna felt her heart pounding so loudly that it seemed everyone could hear it. Now they would find it. Now. And suddenly a thought pierced her consciousness like lightning. Anna remembered the small camera installed in the hallway. She had installed it 6 months ago, when small items began to disappear from her bag. The camera recorded everything that happened in the hallway, including the moment when Lydia touched her hand and, perhaps, dropped something into the bag. There was a chance. The policeman took out a packet, white powder in a transparent plastic bag. An oppressive silence hung in the apartment, broken only by the creaking of the policeman's boots. The white packet lay on the table in a transparent evidence bag, like a foreign object that had suddenly invaded Anna's life. She sat on the couch, keeping her back straight, and tried to force herself to breathe slowly and deeply. Panic was rising somewhere inside, but she pushed it back, like an experienced swimmer keeps his head above water during a storm. Lydia Sergeyevna, on the contrary, could not hide her satisfaction. She stood next to the policeman, adjusting the bright silk scarf on her shoulders, a gift from Igor. There was triumph in her eyes, and the corners of her lips trembled with a poorly restrained smile. "Well, comrades, I told you right away," she turned to the senior policeman. "This woman has been behaving strangely for a long time, and my son is suffering because of her. Now you have proof." Quote, "Mom, shut up." Igor finally couldn't stand it. "Do you even understand what you're saying?" "I understand," she answered coldly. "I'm saving you from shame and from living with a man who will drag you into the abyss." Igor turned pale, but said nothing more. His eyes darted between his mother and his wife, as if he didn't know which of them he feared more. The senior policeman, Major Krylov, was a man of about 6 years of age, with a thick mustache and the tired look of a man who had to deal with human dirt more often than he would like. He looked closely at Anna. Quote, "Citizen Petrova," he began in an official tone, "do you understand that the substance found is subject to examination? Until we receive the results, we are obliged to consider you as a person in whose possession a suspicious substance was found." Anna nodded. "I understand, but I also want to state that this package was planted on me, and I have evidence." Lydia jerked her head up. Quote, "More fantasies," she snorted. "You saw that it was found in her bag. What other evidence?" Anna slowly turned her face towards her. "The camera in the hallway. It recorded everything." For a second, the room became so quiet that you could hear the clock hand click off a minute. Lydia turned pale, but then found the strength to smile. "What camera? Are you pretending to be a spy?" Quote, "A regular one," Anna answered. "Ever since my things started disappearing, I decided to play it safe. The camera records to a memory card, and the recording shows who touched my bag." Krylov squinted. "Will you show me?" "Of course," Anna said, and for the first time that evening she allowed herself a slight smile. While the junior policeman took out a bag and filled out the paperwork, Anna headed to the bedroom. Lydia watched her every move, and either irritation or confusion flashed in her eyes. Igor approached his wife. "Anna, what are you doing?" he whispered. "What you have to do," she answered just as quietly. "Trust me for once." He recoiled as if from a blow. The words hurt him more than he wanted to show. A minute later, Anna returned with a small flash drive. She inserted it into her laptop and displayed the recording on the screen. The frame showed the hallways. Guests were saying goodbye, noisily getting dressed, laughing. And then Lydia came up to Anna, put her hand on her hand, some gesture flashed in her other hand, and something appeared in the bag. The movement was fast, almost imperceptible, but when enlarged, there was no doubt. The policeman leaned closer. The younger one even whistled. "You can clearly see it," he said. Krylov silently rubbed his chin. Lydia turned blue. "It's a montage," she cried out. She had staged it all. She had recorded it and replaced it on purpose. Anna looked up. The recording from the card was not edited. "If you want, take the original." Igor looked as if the ground was slipping out from under his feet. He looked from his mother to his wife, and you could read it in his eyes. He can't believe it. "Mom," he whispered. "Why?" Lydia didn't answer. She stood there clutching her purse so tightly that her fingers turned white. "We have to confiscate the recording too," Krylov said for verification. Anna nodded. "Take it. I have nothing to hide." Then everything happened like a dream. The police inspected the apartment, drew up a report, and collected evidence. Lydia tried to object, screaming that she was being set up, but Krylov only shook his head tiredly. He had seen such stories too often to believe hysterics. Anna sat on the couch and watched her mother-in-law's carefully constructed plan collapse. Two forces fought inside her, relief and growing anxiety. She knew this was only the beginning. When the police left, taking the bag and the flash drive, a heavy silence reigned in the apartment. Igor sank onto the table and covered his face with his hands. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why all this? Why?" Anna looked at him for a long time before answering. "Because your mother will never accept me. For her, I am an enemy, and today she decided that she can destroy me." Igor raised his eyes. There was too much pain in them. "But this is a crime." Anna nodded. "Exactly." Lydia was silent. She stood by the window, turning away from them, and only her shoulders were shaking. It seemed that she was looking for words, but could not find them. Anna got up. "I'm going to bed. Tomorrow will be a difficult day," and she went into the bedroom, leaving Igor and his mother in the living room. She understood that interrogations, checks, new attacks lay ahead, but the main thing had already happened. Lydia revealed herself, and now this war would take a completely different course. The morning began with a call. Anna woke up from the sharp sound of the phone and immediately felt her heart squeeze. She knew who it could be. "Hello." Her voice trembled, but she pulled herself together. "Citizen Petrova," a hoarse male voice sounded in the receiver. "This is the police department calling. Please appear today at 10 a.m. to give an explanation on the case." Anna closed her eyes. She was waiting for this. "Yes, of course, I'll come," she answered evenly. Igor sat at the table, holding a mug of unfinished tea in his hands. He had not slept almost all night. His eyes were red, his face was tired, and confusion was visible in every line of his figure. Quote, "Did they call?" he asked, although he had heard everything anyway. Anna nodded. "Yes, I will go." He was silent for a long time, then said, "I don't understand why Mom did this. I always believed her." Anna looked at him with pity and bitterness. "And did you believe me?" she asked quietly. He looked away. Quote, "I didn't know who to believe." These words were like a knife, but Anna only pressed her lips together and went to get ready. The police station smelled of cheap coffee and old paper. The corridors were narrow, the walls were peeling, but everything here breathed power. Major Krylov met her without unnecessary greetings. "This way, please." The office was crowded. A table, a chair, a couple of cabinets, a painting on the wall, a portrait. Anna sat down and folded her hands on her knees. "We have studied your entry," Krylov began. "I will say it frankly. It looks convincing. But the final conclusion will be given by the examination." Anna nodded. "I am ready to cooperate." "Good." He leafed through the folder. "And now tell us in detail what kind of relationship you have with Lydia Sergeevna." She spoke for a long time, about how her mother-in-law treated her coldly from the very beginning, how she interfered in her and Igor's life, how she tried to control every step, about the constant humiliation, hints, quarrels and, finally, about yesterday evening. Krylov listened in silence, making notes. "So you think that she wanted to set you up?" "I am sure of it," Anna said firmly. "She had a motive. She always dreamed of ruining our marriage." The major nodded. "Okay, now your mother-in-law." When Lydia Sergeevna was brought into the office, Anna saw her for the first time not as the mistress of the situation, but as a woman who had been driven into a corner. Her face was pale, her eyes darted around. Quote, "Well, hello, Anechka," she said, trying to feign confidence. "See what you've done to her?" "I have." Anna grinned. "You did it." "Quiet," Krylov intervened. "This is not a family conversation." He turned on the recording from the camera. Lydia turned even paler. Quote, "It's a fake," she screamed. "She edited it all." Krylov shook his head wearily. The experts checked the file. There was no editing. The recording was genuine. Silence. Anna felt her heart beating loudly and heavily. She had been waiting for this moment. Quote, "Lydia Sergeevna," Krylov said, "we have reason to believe that it was you who planted the bag of powder. We must get an explanation from you." "This is absurd," she cried out. I am a mother, I am protecting my son. Are you protecting him? Anna couldn't take it anymore. You wanted to ruin my life, make me look like a drug addict, destroy my reputation. Quiet, quote, Krylov barked. Silence reigned in the office again. Igor was sitting on a chair by the wall. His face was gray as stone. He didn't interfere, he just looked at his mother with horror and at his wife with some new, unfamiliar respect. Mom, he finally said, tell the truth. But Lydia only pressed her lips together and turned away. The next hours were like a nightmare. Interrogations, protocols, signatures. Anna was sent home, warned that she could be called again. Lydia was detained for further investigation. When she and Igor left the department, it was already dark. The street greeted them with a cold wind. They walked in silence. Igor suddenly stopped, looked at Anna and said, I didn't know you were so strong. She smiled bitterly. I had to become like this. At home, Anna sat by the window and looked at the city lights for a long time. It was empty inside. She had won the first battle, but there was a war ahead. She knew Lydia would not give up so easily. And yet now the situation had changed. Now she had Anna not only evidence, but also strength. And for the first time in a long time, her husband's respect. But deep down she understood that this story would not end with accusations and interrogations. It would be a fight for trust, for the family, for the future, and her main surprise was still ahead. The morning was strangely quiet. There were no footsteps or slamming doors in the apartment, only the ticking of the clock and the occasional noise of cars outside the window. Anna sat in the kitchen, clutching a mug of cold coffee in her palms, and caught herself thinking that she was waiting for a call from anyone, from the police, from friends, from Lydia herself. Igor came in sleepy, but sober, without yesterday's confusion. He sat down opposite, was silent for a long time, and then said, "They'll call you again." Anna nodded. Of course, but now the situation is different. He rubbed his face with his hands. I don't understand how it all happened. Yesterday I felt like my mother was taken away from me. Quote. Anna looked him straight in the eye. And think about it, who took it? Me or her? The phone rang closer to lunchtime. Anna was called again. This time she was met in a spacious office, where neat diagrams and folders hung instead of peeling walls. Major Krylov looked more serious than usual. "We have the results of the examination," he said, nodding at the folder. There really was narcotic powder in the package. Anna sighed. She expected it, but it was hard to hear. However, Krylov continued, "During the verification of the recording and the circumstances, we came to the conclusion that the version about the planting is confirmed." Moreover, we have witnesses. Anna raised her head. So she is. Krylov nodded. A case has been opened against her under the article on attempted illegal trafficking. These words sounded like a sentence. Anna felt not joy, but a strange emptiness. She imagined Lydia, proud, confident, now in the role of the accused. Quote, "Can she avoid punishment?" Anna asked. "Perhaps the court will take into account her age and health," the major said. "But the very attempt to frame you is serious." Anna nodded. When she returned home and told Igor everything, he sat silently for a long time, then said, "I don't know how to live with this." "With what exactly?" Quote, Anna asked. "With the fact that my mother is a criminal and that all this time I protected her, not you." Anna took his hand. "You have a choice. You can close your eyes and continue to believe her lies, or open them and accept the truth." He looked at her for a long time, and there was something new, heavy, but real in his gaze. The days dragged on in anticipation of the trial. Anna tried to live her usual life. Work, home, meetings with friends. But somewhere inside there was a constant feeling that she was standing on the threshold of something huge and final. Igor withdrew, began to talk little, but sometimes at night he would come up to Anna, hug her and whisper, "Forgive me." She did not answer, she was simply silent and stroked his hand. At the trial, Lydia looked different. There was no more arrogance, no longer the unusual haughtiness. She sat in a dark, formal suit, her hands were shaking. Her voice was quiet, sometimes breaking. "I did not mean any harm," she repeated. "I only wanted to save my son." Anna sat next to Igor. She listened to these words and understood. Lydia still does not admit her guilt. She justifies herself even here. Quote, "The judge listened, reviewed the materials. The sentence was lenient, a suspended sentence, community service, mandatory treatment. But for Lydia, this was worse than prison. Her pride was broken." After the trial, the three of them went outside. The frosty air burned their skin. "Son," Lydia addressed her son. "You understand, I did it for you." He looked at her for a long time. His eyes contained everything: pain, resentment, fatigue. "No, Mom," he said finally. "You did it for yourself." She shuddered, as if from a blow. Anna silently took her husband's hand. At home, they sat in silence for a long time. Then Igor said, "I realized one thing. Trust cannot be bought with words, it is built by actions." Quote. Anna nodded. "Exactly." He looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, his gaze did not contain doubt, but determination. "I choose you," he said. Weeks passed. Lydia almost never showed up. Sometimes she called, but Anna felt that her words no longer had the same power. Anna and Igor were learning to live again. It was not easy. The wounds remained, trust was restored slowly, but every day was a step forward. Anna knew that she had won not only the battle with her mother-in-law, she had won the right to her life, and now no one could take it away from her.